Today we are going to be talking about absolute value. So it says a number line that extends from -10 to 10 is sketched out on the school parking lot. Christine is standing on -5 and Andre is standing on 5. How far away from each other are they? Who is further away from 0? So when we look at Christine, we know she's on -5. -5 is 5 places away from 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5 is 5 places away from 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they are both standing 5 places away from 0. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 places away from each other. So we're going to be talking about absolute value, and the absolute value of a number is the distance away from 0 on the number line. It is always positive because it refers to distance. So if you look right here, this is read as the absolute value of -5. So the absolute value of -5 is 5. If Christine is standing at -5, her absolute value, the distance away from 0, is 5. And the absolute value of 5 is also just 5. So we're going to use the number line to plot point A through E. So the absolute value of -8, it's always positive. So it's just 8. So it's 8 places away from 0. The absolute value of -1 is 1. That is just 1 place away from 0. The absolute value of 3 would be 3. 3 spaces away from 0. We have absolute value of -4 1/2. So absolute value has to always be positive, and it just tells us the distance away from 0. So 4 1/2, -4 1/2 would be 4 1/2 places away from 0. The absolute value of 6. This is just 6. So now, boys and girls, we are going to use greater than, less than, or equal to compare the values in questions 1 through 4. Then write the integer to represent the situations in 5 through 6. In problem 1, we have the absolute value of -4.9 and the absolute value of -5. Well, I know that the absolute value always has to be positive. So we have 4.9 and 5.0. And we're going to compare those. So when you stack these on top of each other, we see that the absolute value of -4.9 is less than the absolute value of -5. And now we have the absolute value of 10 and the absolute value of -10. We know that the absolute value of 10 is 10. And the absolute value of -10 would also just be 10. Remember, the absolute value always has to be positive. So we have 10 and 10. That tells us that the absolute value of 10 and the absolute value of negative 10 are equal to one another. Now we have the absolute value of negative 36 and the absolute value of negative 19. So we know absolute value always has to be positive. So absolute value of negative 36 is 36, and the absolute value of negative 19 is 19. And when we look at these, we know that 3 is greater than 1, so 36 is greater than 19. Now we have the absolute value of negative 9 2/3 and the absolute value of 9. So when we look at these, we know that absolute value always has to be positive. So the absolute value of negative 9 2/3 is positive 9 2/3. And the absolute value of 9 is 9. So looking at these, I can tell that 9 2/3 is greater than 9. So the absolute value of negative 9 2/3 is greater than the absolute value of 9. Number 5 says a football team loses 20 yards on a quarterback sack. Write an absolute value to represent the change in yards. So we lost 20 yards. So he would be going back 20 yards, which would make it negative. So we want to know the absolute value of negative 20. Number 6, a submarine submerges and travels 120 feet below sea level. Write an absolute value to represent the change in depth. Well, we know if we have below sea level, we're going to be going backwards. So we have negative 120 feet below sea level. So we need the absolute value of negative 120. All right, go ahead and glue these into your journal. Please don't forget to write your summary in Schoology.